Greetings everyone, this is GosuDad, and welcome to the 1 vs 1 qualifier for CuePhoenix in Season 7 of the Blizzard Online Ladder. This is Morphius vs CuePhoenix, Terran vs Zerg on the map Korhal Compound LE. Hey everyone, this is GosuDad and welcome to Korhal Compound LE, a new map for Season 7 of the Online Ladder. In the lower left hand side, we have Morphius playing Terran in the red, and on the upper right hand side we've got CuePhoenix playing Zerg in the blue. A new race for CuePhoenix playing Zerg after playing Terran for such a long time, a long-awaited race switch for him. Had promised to switch over to Protoss, but now he's playing Zerg, so expect to see some dynamic play, a lot of bases from CuePhoenix, and not sure what to expect from Morphius. This is a 1 vs 1 qualifier game, so CuePhoenix may be matched with someone of a higher league than what he was placed previously. He was in silver, but Morphius building his starting supply depot up at the front of his base. Exciting. CuePhoenix on his side going for the extractor trick. You can see the remains of that drone being cancelled there. Up to 11 supply waiting for that Overlord to come out, and that Overlord is already routed to the natural expansion. So Korhal Compound, a new map for Season 7. Nice little natural expansion from your main. CuePhoenix talking about how much he hasn't played, and as we get lost here on this map, there is a third coming down from this natural, a nice little entry way down here. Nice, pretty big entrance ramp right here, and that is not blocked on the other side by rocks, so your opponent can come in through the back entrance over here. So this is a very new, very kind of different map style here. It is a two-player map, so these players will know exactly where they are starting from. Two Xel'Naga towers in the middle of the map. CuePhoenix sending his scouting Overlord over, oh so slowly, over to Morpheus's main. Morpheus building the nice little wall off at the beginning of his base. CuePhoenix saying, oh, that this is Morpheus saying that he is new to this game, but new or not, this should be an interesting matchup, this being CuePhoenix's first game playing as Zerg in the ladder, at least recently. He did play a couple of games way back when in Season 1, but nothing recently. So Morpheus going for an early refinery here, one harvester on that. Now two harvesters, wow, so exciting. A first supply depot down here, Morpheus doing a great little wall off as we love spinning around this camera, zooming in and whatnot. We've got an SCV hanging out over here, taking a break, which is very good because SCVs get tired. Didn't know if you knew that, they do get tired. There are people inside those little robotic exoskeletons, and another SCV waiting out here saying, hey, why don't you let me in? And now he's inside, very safe inside, and CuePhoenix is going to be taking advantage of that, quite possibly. Got a bunch of drones over on this extractor, going to be getting lots of gas for him. Should be building up for that Zergling speed, or ooh, Roach Warren going to be coming in for a Roach bust, perhaps. Going to be looking for a timing here where he builds up just maybe enough for 7 roaches. Got a couple of Zerglings going to be taking those out to scout, unless he decides to go for a long game. CuePhoenix getting a good vision of what's going on inside Morpheus's base. You can see that second barracks being built. If he's smart, he knows that that is a second barracks and not the first one. Morpheus up to that orbital command, and CuePhoenix starting to make a little bit of headway into the base, going to check things out. And from his position, we can see that he can see that there are 2 barracks here, so might be expecting some early 2 barracks pressure. But on the other hand, these 2 barracks are so incredibly late. Not going to be expecting that. I suppose he might be worried that there's already an expansion here in the lower right-hand side, but Morpheus did say that this was one of his earlier games. He is new to this game. CuePhoenix going for an expansion at his natural. Typical for the Zerg player. In fact, maybe even a little bit late. It is the 4-minute and 50 mark. So I guess I would say that is late, and of course it is late, because he did go for that early refinery as well as the Roach Warren, so should be seeing a bunch of roaches coming out from him, unless he decides to play passive or defensive. He may have been getting that Roach Warren as a defense measure in case a bunch of Marines come in to attack. So we see an evolution chamber going down, should be researching upgrades, which upgrades are very crucial, of course, for Zerg, because they have so many units, and upgrades are so very awesome when there's so very many units. Lots of SOs going on here, a bunch of Zerglings coming out to do some reconnaissance and make sure that we've got some map control here, and a Zerg coming up to the front of Morpheus's base to see what's going on, and he's going to find a very well turtled up Terran player with only 2 Marines, which is kind of a surprise. But if we look at these supply counts, these 2 players are on par, except they're not. They're actually not on par. They're terribly not on par at all. Morpheus with 21 workers, way ahead of CuePhoenix. Does CuePhoenix even know how to play Zerg? This is terrible. Hatchery almost done for CuePhoenix. He should be able to drone up if indeed he built enough Overlords. And we got 2 brand new built Overlords heading their way over, and Zergling speed being built for CuePhoenix. So far this game, not too interactive. Players just kind of sitting back on their bases and building up. That can be in CuePhoenix's favor, as he is up on 2 bases now. Morphius building his natural command center base inside of his base. That's one of the advantages of Terran. They can build their command center safely on the inside of their turtling wall here. Lots of buildings at the front for Morphius. Will be hard for his units to make it out from his main into his natural if that problem arises. CuePhoenix taking map control with a handful of Zerglings and a couple of Roaches making their way across. Really not sure what they're going to be used for at this point. And that's one of the key things about Zerg. There's this really careful, delicate balance between the economy. Here you can see all these drones going out. The economy and the army. Zerg players have to constantly be balancing whether or not they're going to be building drones or whether they're going to be building army units. And they do have the ability, because of the larva mechanic, as we see these weird little larva things right here, of building lots of units of the same type, of any type that they have available in their tech tree. So at this point he can build, of course, lots of Zerglings or lots of Roaches, depending on what he sees on the map. But if he doesn't have vision on the inside of the base, which he does not whatsoever, he doesn't know what's coming. And at this point it looks like we've got a tank who's kind of stuck here, squashed between all these buildings. I don't know how this tank is going to get out. May have to lift up a factory. He's having a hard time figuring that out as well. So CuePhoenix not putting any pressure at the beginning of the turtle base, because he is waiting for that expansion to come out. And that expansion, as we mentioned before, actually this expansion's pretty well tight, and CuePhoenix got a nice little Zergling here waiting for that expansion. He'll know exactly when it comes out. He doesn't have vision of these army units making it out, but he's going to be there as soon as that command center comes in and the units from Morpheus able to kill him. But CuePhoenix knows that there's an expansion there. This is where the pressure comes. This is where all the excitement comes in that Zerg game, in that Zerg matchup, as CuePhoenix is on 2 bases, relatively exposed, army supply count just slightly higher than his opponent, sending in a Roach to see what's going. Looks like he's going to send these Roaches in to put on some pressure and say, Morpheus, if you're going to move out into your natural expansion, you're going to need to have much more defenses back here at your base. This tank will be able to take a lot of shots on these Roaches. They really should have just ran in and killed the tank right away, because that tank does that area of effect damage plus a bonus attack to armor. So Morpheus able to hold off that very small Roach attack. Now note, mind you, at this point in the game, CuePhoenix should be able to produce a much larger army than that in the typical scenario. But of course these players are down in Silver League. CuePhoenix not having played very much at all, just doing casting or just not doing anything at all related to StarCraft. But we see a bunch of these SCVs coming out to the natural, and Morpheus's income should be skyrocketing as we try to find the right tab for that. And it is actually just kind of catching up to CuePhoenix, who, don't forget, he was on 2 bases, but he should be building drones. I don't see a maxed out drone line here. I see, wow, that's a paltry 11 drones on the mineral line. This is not even remotely a saturated natural. No gas being taken by CuePhoenix. At this point he could expand to a 3rd, but we're really not seeing any action on that side. Morpheus turtled up with a nice 2 tanks, but even this army is relatively small for what he could have at the 10-minute mark. But we should be seeing this game accelerate as these players are getting the income that can make use of all of their production structures. You can look at that production tab of Morpheus up on the 6 icons to 3, if we're going to count icons that way. And CuePhoenix building, it looks like he's, what is he building? Oh, he is upgrading to a layer that should give him Mutalisk, but in the meantime building a bunch of Roaches hanging out over at this forward Xel'Naga Tower. So this is kind of an interesting aspect of this map, is that this Xel'Naga Tower can give the player who's taking it closer to his opponent. It can give CuePhoenix advanced knowledge of movements out by Morpheus. And of course the reverse is said for Morpheus. If he had taken this tower, he would be able to see CuePhoenix moving out to different places. CuePhoenix placing down a 3rd in the natural position that we had kind of described before, just around the corner from his natural, but it is exposed. So an attacking army in this position right here will be able to block off that natural from reinforcement from the natural of CuePhoenix, etc. An Overseer Cocoon being built. CuePhoenix were a little worried about Cloaked Banshee at this point. Should be seeing some Spore Crawlers back in his mineral line, but I do not. That's kind of an odd choice to build an Overseer and not build Spore Crawlers. Not sure why he's building that, but we'll see if that matters at all. Morpheus has unsieged his tanks. Looks like he may be doing a move out at this time. It's been 12 minutes, not a lot of interaction between these 2 players. Very typical for that Bronze and Silver League play. And a bunch of Zerglings making their way across the map, going to be putting on some pressure or just positioning themselves in the counterattack position. Going to switch over to CuePhoenix's vision as we look to see if he's going to see this move out by Morpheus. Oh, and there come in a bunch of tanks, a bunch of Marines, a bunch of Marauders. No air units, no medevacs, no Vikings. So if CuePhoenix is able to build any kind of Spire units, such as the Mutalist, he should be able to push this off. But at this point, relying purely on ground units, you can check out that production tab. CuePhoenix is not building a lot of army units at this time, although he did just build a whole bunch of Zerglings. So these Zerg units are just keeping the Terran player busy at this point and delaying him from getting to CuePhoenix's third or his natural. Now, he did break down these units pretty well, and that's a pretty good place for him to kind of stop Morphius, stop him back at the Xel'Naga Tower. Morphius not taking advantage of the access to the Xel'Naga Tower to gain extra vision. That's a little bit of a mistake on his side. Checking out his vision, he hasn't even made it over to CuePhoenix's base to see what's going on. There aren't even any scans, actually, to see where CuePhoenix has expanded, etc. So that's a little bit of improvement that he could make on that side. But we are seeing a bunch of tanks and Marines and Marauders moving out. All those tanks being built from a single, oh, no, double factory. So CuePhoenix now moving these units over into a counterattacking position. Just a bunch of Zerglings back at his base, not seeing too much going on. Checking up on that production tab to see a bunch of Zerglings being built, and a Queen, and that attack upgrade bonus. With a Queen at his third, he should have a lot of unit production capabilities. If we take a look over at that at the resource bank over here on the right hand side, he's starting to bank up minerals, so should be seeing a bunch of roaches or something like that, and we can see units making their way across enough. We check out that minimap, trying to be active on that. But Morpheus doesn't see any of this going on. I think if he would have had this Xel'Naga Tower, he may have some advanced vision that CuePhoenix may have an army over here, but I think these guys are actually outside the range of that Xel'Naga Tower. So Morpheus sitting up with a lot of defensive units here, not sure that he knows that there's an actual opposite attack path from this direction. 2 medevacs coming out for Morpheus that will help his units do a nice little stim attack there, if stim is indeed researched. As we click on the Marines, they are not researched, and as we look at these Marines, they are fairly naked, unupgraded Marines. There's not even a combat shield upgrade purchased for him, but this is quite a big army, and an army, if I might add, out of position. No defenses back at Morpheus's base, his natural nor his main, although his main is a maze of buildings, so that would be very hard for CuePhoenix's Zerglings to make it in here and do damage, because there's just so many buildings and upgrades here. It's just kind of a bewildering set of maze of Terran structures, which is a good defensive measure that prevents the Zerg player from just jumping in there and running straight to the mineral line and doing lots of damage. All of this mineral line is being eaten up pretty quickly by all these mules. So CuePhoenix starting to build and mass up units in this counter-attack location. Most of them are Zerglings. I don't see any air units, so they won't be able to hit the medevacs if the medevacs decide to lift up and take units for a drop, or lift up and take units far away, or in the case that we may see a building liftoff, as we see the main army of Morpheus moving away from the main base, away from the Xel'Naga Tower, and towards CuePhoenix's base. This Zergling will see everything that's happening as I try to catch him so we can see this vision. CuePhoenix sees this massive army moving out, and will CuePhoenix do a counterattack into Morpheus's main? And we see this massive set of Zerglings running in, just a few Marines back here, and Morpheus coming up to the natural and attacking. Going to be taking out that Queen pretty quickly, and the tanks are sieging up a whole bunch of Overlords built at once. That's just terrible timing. Those Overlords aren't attacking units, they're just sitting there. A ton of Zerglings taking their time on this natural expansion, which isn't very necessary. They should have made it into the base. And oh, look at that, a bunch of them made it in the base. I did not catch that. They are taking out some building and tech structures here, which is fine, but really they could be doing a lot more damage by taking out these SCVs or trying to go for the command center, as at this point this is a base race situation, and that's kind of what the Zerg player typically likes to have if he has Mutalisk, where he can kite his opponent all over the map. But instead he's going to deal with this massive Terran death ball stuck over at his natural and a dwindling amount of larvae. There's no larvae here, just a couple of Overlords, kind of overproduction on CuePhoenix's side, and Zerglings just hacking away at this base. Morpheus not paying attention to that whatsoever, just going to let it die. We'll see if there's any kind of move out or lift off from Morpheus at all, and Morpheus coming into CuePhoenix's main, not focusing at all on that layer yet. Not sure that he realizes that this is a base race situation. He's really got to kill those hatcheries so that he can get vision of all of CuePhoenix's buildings, which CuePhoenix does not have very many buildings at all. Infestation pit research, that was kind of interesting. Not sure that's going to do any good for CuePhoenix. Now starting to mass up spine crawlers and roaches at his third, because he sees where this is going, because these Zerglings are taking out the supply depots, and Morpheus has lifted off his main command center, and these Zerglings are set to attack it and keep track of it, but as long as he's lifted off, and he will stay in the game, and it turns into a base race situation with the Zerg in a terrible position because he has no anti-air. That was a crucial kind of, I don't know if you call it a mistake or what, but you know, whenever you're playing against a Terran player, you got to watch out for that liftoff, and at this point it all comes down to the micromanagement of these armies. CuePhoenix bringing these Zerglings along just to say, please don't land, actually please land so I can kill you, but Morpheus is not going to do that. He's in this precarious situation where he's going to have to try to track down every single one of CuePhoenix's bases and kill them before CuePhoenix can kill his get a Spire or a Queen or something to hit anti-air and take out his command center. Now, he could move this command center out of the ground locations, which would protect him from Hydralisks or Queens. Tanks moving back, trying to get seized up on the high ground, which would be an excellent place for him to be. CuePhoenix backing off. That's a very smart thing to do. He needs to let these spine crawlers do their attack. Wow, this forward tank, he's got to kill this forward tank, and he needs to back up to get these units in range of the spine crawlers. Trying to do that, trying to micro them. These players have a lot of resources, except for CuePhoenix, who only has a couple hundred resources. Counterattack by Zerglings into the back, and they're able to take out the tanks, but not able to take out the infantry. Medevacs are going to be able to lift up. They're going to be able to lift up units and put them down and heal them. And CuePhoenix does not have a chance at this point. He doesn't have enough money to even make a bunch of Zerglings. He has nothing at this point, and this is GG by CuePhoenix. Wow, that was a crazy game. I told you, Zerg games, intense, crazy base races, a lot of multitasking going on between the different bases, lots of units, counterattacks. That is Zerg, and I love that dynamic between the Zerg players and the Terran players. Terran players going for that turtling, going up with the big death ball. Gotta move it, gotta put it in the right place because it's not very mobile compared to the Zerg units, and the Zerg just trying so desperately to kite those Terran units back to their base. But there comes that point in the Terran Zerg metagame where the Terran just says, that's it, I'm going to come in and kill every one of your buildings. I know there's not as many buildings as I have. I can do this, I can lift off, let's go for it. And that makes this matchup just so exciting for me, not only to play but also to cast it, even though I knew the outcome of this game. You can just see this excitement. There's just so much to keep track of, everything going on here. And as a Zerg counterattack, you see all the infantry units moving up to the front. Boy, I'm casting even in the post game. Watch those Zerglings. They're going to come in here, and Morphius is going to see it, but he's really focused on the front. And the tanks turn around to fire. Oh, wow. What a reaction time. Did you see that? He instantly moved the camera as soon as those tanks fired and knew that there was an attack coming from the other side, and that allowed him to counterattack the counterattack very quickly, and that's just an excellent move by himself. So even though he says I'm a new player, new to this game, he was able to handle that very well, able to handle those counterattacks, and able to have just enough of that multitasking to lift up his command center, and that let him win the game, especially with no air units by CuePhoenix. Alright, GosuDad signing off. What a game to start Season 7 off with, and we will see you guys next time. GosuDad.blogspot.com and at GosuDad on Twitter.